She's with the catering company. 3 words. No malice, no awareness. The specific tone of someone stating a fact about the weather. Nadia picked up the empty glasses on the table beside her and walked back toward the kitchen without letting her face change. She'd had a lot of practice at that. She was at the service door when she felt someone looking, not at what she was carrying, not at her uniform, at her neck. She turned, an older man, black suit, no tie. He wasn't looking at her the way people at this gala had been looking at her all evening, through her, past her, at the space she occupied rather than the person occupying it. He was looking at the pendant. The small cast iron pan, handmade, silver gone dark with age. Her grandmother had pressed it into her hand 3 weeks before she died and said, "This was made by a man who believed the most ordinary things deserved to be beautiful." The old man looked at the pendant. He looked at her. "Where did you get that?" he said. Not curiosity, recognition. The sound of someone seeing something they thought the world had lost. "My grandmother," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "What was her name?" he said, and the evening changed. If this stays with you, subscribe. We tell stories about the moment someone finally sees you. Share it with someone who needs to hear this tonight. Nadia had almost not taken the job. Not because of the money. The Cole Foundation Gala paid 3 times her standard rate. The kind of number that didn't require deliberation. Because of the name. Cole Foundation. She'd seen it on the contract and had sat with it for a moment before she signed. 4 years ago, before Nadia's table existed, before she had a commercial kitchen or a staff or a van with her name on the side, she'd applied for a small business grant from the Cole Foundation. $15, $1,000. Enough to buy the equipment she needed to move from cooking out of May's kitchen to cooking professionally. She hadn't gotten it. Not a rejection with feedback. A form letter. The specific, institutional silence of a system that processed applications and produced outcomes without ever seeing the person behind them. She'd built Nadia's table without the grant. It had taken 2 more years and cost her things she didn't talk about. The apartment she'd had to leave, the months she'd borrowed money from May, who had given it without being asked and without attaching anything to the giving, except the specific, matter-of-fact love of a woman who understood that some things needed to happen and money was sometimes what made them possible. She'd paid May back. May had refused the last payment. "Keep it," she'd said. "Put it in the business. That's where it belongs." That was 3 months before the diagnosis. May Washington had cooked for 61 years, not professionally, personally. The distinction mattered. Professionally meant for money, for recognition, for the specific documented output of a career. Personally meant for people. For the neighbor who had a new baby in no time. For the church potluck, where May always brought 3 things because one was never enough. For Nadia, starting at age 4 when May had put her on a step stool at the counter and handed her a wooden spoon and said, "Cooking is just paying attention to the food and to the person you're making it for." Nadia had been paying attention ever since. The pendant had come from a trip May had taken to Mississippi in 1989. She'd gone alone, unusual for May, who moved through the world with other people, the way some people move through it with oxygen, as a basic requirement. But she'd gone alone that summer, a road trip she'd never fully explained, and she'd come back with 3 things. A jar of Tupelo honey, a story about a woman named Celestine who ran a boarding house outside Yazoo City, and the pendant. She'd worn it for 30 years. When she gave it to Nadia, she'd said, "A man made this, James Earl Cooper. He had a workshop in a town so small it didn't have a stoplight. He made things out of what people actually used, pots, spoons, tools, things that fed people and fixed things and held things together. He said the objects we use every day should be beautiful because we use them every day." She'd pressed it into Nadia's hand. "He believed that the ordinary deserved to be treated like it mattered," May had said. "So do you." Nadia had put it on that afternoon. She hadn't taken it off since. She'd taken the Cole Foundation job because of something she'd found while researching the event, a program the foundation had funded 12 years ago. A culinary training initiative for women coming out of the shelter system on the South Side. 6 months of professional kitchen training, job placement assistance, a small stipend for childcare during training. May had volunteered there, not as a chef, as a Tuesday afternoon presence. She'd come every Tuesday for 2 years and cooked with the women in the program, not teaching in any formal sense, just cooking, showing up, being someone who had 60 years of knowledge and was willing to share it with anyone who wanted to be in the same kitchen. Nadia hadn't known that until she was going through May's things after the funeral and had found a folder of photos. May at a stainless steel counter with 3 women Nadia didn't recognize. May laughing at something someone had said. May's hands, the hands Nadia had watched her whole life, doing the thing they always did. The foundation had funded the program that May had given her Tuesday afternoons to for 2 years. That was why Nadia had signed the contract. Not for the money, for the Tuesdays. She'd arrived at the penthouse at 4. 6 hours of setup. Her team of 4 moving through the kitchen with the specific, practiced efficiency of people who had done this enough times to have a system and trusted the system. By 8, the gala was at full capacity. 300 people. Black tie. The kind of event where the flower arrangements cost more than Nadia made in a month. And nobody mentioned it because in this room, that number wasn't remarkable. She'd moved through it the way she always moved through events, present and absent simultaneously. The specific skill of a caterer who understood that the best service was the kind that felt effortless because the person providing it had made it look that way. She'd been doing exactly that when the guest in the green dress had started talking to her. The woman had complimented the mushroom crostini. Nadia had said thank you. She had been about to say, I developed that recipe in my grandmother's kitchen, when Brandon Cole had arrived at the edge of the conversation. She's with the catering company. 3 words. No malice. That was the part she'd turned over the most in the 4 minutes since it happened. The specific, almost clinical absence of malice in it. He hadn't said it to hurt her. He hadn't said it to diminish her. He'd said it the way you stated a correction to a minor misunderstanding because minor misunderstandings needed correcting and this one did, and so he'd corrected it. He hadn't looked at her when he said it. That was the whole thing, really. He hadn't looked at her, not because he was rude. Because she wasn't there to be looked at. She was there to make the evening run, and the evening was running, and so she had performed her function correctly and was therefore invisible in the way that things that worked correctly were always invisible. She'd picked up the glasses. She'd walked back to the service door. She'd done what she always did. She'd kept working. His name was Thomas Cole. She knew that before he told her, she'd seen his photograph in the foundation materials she'd researched before signing the contract. Founder. Retired. The man who had built the thing his son was now running. He didn't introduce himself. He asked about the pendant. My grandmother, she'd said. May Washington. She got it in Mississippi, 1989. He looked at the pendant for a long moment. Not at her. At it. The way you looked at something you'd thought about for a long time and hadn't expected to see again. James Earl Cooper, he said. Not a question. She looked at him. You know him, she said. I knew him, Thomas said. He died in 2009. He said it the way you said things that were still true, even though you'd been carrying them for 15 years. Not with fresh grief, with the settled weight of something that had become part of how you understood the world. Come with me, he said. Not a command, an offering. She looked at the ballroom behind her, at her team moving through it with the practiced efficiency of a system that didn't require her constant presence to function. She went with him. They stood at the window, at the far edge of the room. Chicago below them, the specific, indifferent beauty of a city at night, doing what cities did, regardless of what happened on the 43rd floor above it. I met James Earl in 1974, Thomas said. I was 22. I had $340 in a savings account and an idea about starting a foundation and no idea what that actually meant. She looked at him. He had a workshop in Yazoo County, Thomas said. Population 800. He made things. Small things. Useful things. A cast iron pan pendant. A sterling silver thimble. A set of spoons with handles shaped like the tools the women in his town used every day. Rakes, hose, the handle of a church fan. She thought about May, about the summer of 1989, about a road trip May had never fully explained. He believed, Thomas said, that the objects people used to do ordinary work deserved to be treated as beautiful. That if you made a woman's thimble out of silver instead of plastic, just that one thing, you were saying something to her about how you understood the value of what she did with it. Nadia looked at the pendant, at the cast iron pan the size of her thumbnail, at 35 years of May wearing it every day. He couldn't get funding, Thomas said. Nobody wanted to invest in a black craftsman in rural Mississippi making small silver objects for women in small towns. The numbers didn't work. The market wasn't there. Every organization he approached said some version of the same thing. He paused. "What did you do?" she said. "I gave him $2,000, Thomas said. "Everything I had beyond the $340. I didn't have a foundation yet. I didn't have anything yet. I believed what he was doing mattered." He looked at the city. He used it to buy a second kiln. He made things for another 35 years. She was quiet. She thought about $2,000 in 1974. About what $2,000 meant when you had $340 and believed in something enough to give away everything above it. "My wife had a pendant," Thomas said. "Different one. A thimble on a chain. She wore it every day until she died." He looked at the small cast iron pan at Nadia's neck. "I haven't seen one of his pieces in 6 years." She reached up. She touched the pendant. She thought about May pressing it into her hand. "My grandmother wore it every day too," she said. 30 years. "She gave it to me 3 weeks before she died." Thomas looked at her, not at the pendant, at her. "What did she tell you about it?" he said. Nadia thought about that afternoon. About May sitting in the chair by the window, the light coming through at the angle that made everything look briefly like a painting, the pendant in her open hand. "She said the man who made it believed the ordinary deserved to be beautiful," Nadia said. She said, "So do you." Thomas was quiet, the specific quiet of someone receiving something they hadn't expected to receive. "That sounds like James Earl," he said. "It sounds like May," she said. He looked at her. "Tell me about her," he said. And Nadia understood something she hadn't understood all evening, that this was what being seen actually felt like. Not someone acknowledging your presence. Someone asking for the story behind it. Not, "What are you doing here? Who brought you here?" She told him about May. She told him about the step stool at the counter, about the wooden spoon, about 61 years of cooking for people. Not professionally, personally, the distinction that mattered. About the Tuesday afternoons at the shelter program the foundation had funded. Thomas was very still when she said that. "She volunteered there," Nadia said. 2 years, every Tuesday. "I didn't know until I found the photos after the funeral." The Southside Culinary Initiative. Thomas said. "Yes," she said. He looked at the city. "I started that program in 2010, he said, before I handed the foundation to Brandon. It was the last thing I built before I stepped back." She thought about the folder of photos, about May's hands at a stainless steel counter, about a program Thomas had built, and a woman named May who had shown up every Tuesday to put her 60 years into it. Two people who had never met, connected by a belief that the ordinary deserved to be treated like it mattered. James Earl Cooper had known it. Thomas Cole had funded it. May Washington had lived it every Tuesday afternoon, and none of them had known about the others. "She never told you she went there?" Thomas said. "May didn't talk about the things she did," Nadia said. "She just did them." Thomas looked at her. Something moved across his face, not sentiment, the specific expression of someone recognizing a pattern they'd spent their life trying to understand. "James Earl was the same way," he said. "He never talked about the work. He just made things." He paused. "I used to ask him why he didn't promote himself more, why he didn't try to get more attention for what he was doing." "What did he say?" She said. "He said the object speaks. If I have to explain it, I didn't make it right." Nadia looked at the pendant, at the cast iron pan the size of her thumbnail, at 35 years of May wearing something that spoke without explaining. She thought about the mushroom crostini, about developing the recipe at 2 in the morning in May's kitchen, about the woman in the green dress saying they were the best she'd had all year, about not getting to say I made those, about not needing to. She would have liked you, Nadia said. May? Thomas said. Yes, she said. He almost smiled. I think I would have liked her too, he said. He found them at 9:23. Not looking for his father, looking for the foundation's major donor from Milwaukee, who had been seen heading toward the window side of the room, and who Brandon had been meaning to intercept for 40 minutes, but kept getting pulled away from by the specific, endless gravity of being the person everyone at an event like this needed something from. He saw his father first. Then he saw who his father was talking to. He stopped, not dramatically, the small internal stop of someone whose brain had registered something unexpected and was processing before the body caught up. The woman from the catering company. His father was talking to the woman from the catering company. Not the polite, brief exchange of a foundation founder being gracious to staff, a conversation. The kind with weight in it. The kind where both people were leaning slightly toward each other in the specific unconscious way of people who had found something worth finding in what the other person was saying. He walked over. Dad, he said. Thomas looked up. Brandon, he said, the specific even tone that told Brandon nothing about what his father was thinking, which was exactly as much as Thomas Cole ever revealed in a room full of people. Brandon looked at Nadia. She looked back. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Do you two know each other? Brandon said. We do now, Thomas said. Brandon looked at his father. The Milwaukee donor is sit down, Brandon? Thomas said. Brandon looked at him. Thomas was not looking at him. He was looking at Nadia. Tell him about the pendant, Thomas said. She didn't want to. Not because of what had happened 40 minutes ago. She'd put that in the place. She put things that needed to be put somewhere while she was working. Not forgotten. Filed. She'd take it out later, in the car on the way home, and she'd look at it and feel what she felt, and then she'd move on, because moving on was what you did when the work was bigger than the moment. She didn't want to tell Brandon about the pendant, because the pendant was May's. And May was not for this room. She looked at Thomas. He was watching her with the specific, patient attention of someone who understood that he was asking something that cost something, and was waiting to see if she'd decide it was worth it. She decided. Not for Brandon, for the story, for what Thomas had told her, for James Earl Cooper and the $2,000 and the second kiln in 35 years of making things that spoke without explaining, for May's Tuesdays. She told Brandon about the pendant, not everything, the shape of it, the man who made it, what Thomas had told her about the foundation's beginning. Brandon listened. She watched him listen. He was not a bad listener, she could see that. He received information the way people received information when they were used to it, being relevant to decisions they had to make, processed, categorized, placed in the correct folder. He was looking for the point. She could see him looking for it. So James Earl Cooper, Brandon said, was someone you funded early on? Yes, Thomas said. And this is one of his pieces, Brandon said. Yes, Thomas said. And her grandmother bought it in '89, Brandon said. Yes, Thomas said. Brandon nodded. The nod of someone who had assembled the facts and understood the connection, and was now waiting for the part that explained why his father had been standing at a window for 30 minutes talking about it instead of working the room. It's a remarkable coincidence, Brandon said. Thomas looked at his son. It's not a coincidence, Thomas said. What is it then? Brandon said. Thomas was quiet for a moment. The specific quiet of someone deciding how to say something true to a person who had learned to hear things in a way that might make the true thing harder to land. It's a thread, Thomas said, between people who believe the same thing without knowing each other. James Earl believed it. May believed it. Nadia believes it. He paused. I believed it when I was 22 years old with $340 in a savings account and gave away everything above it because believing it was the only thing I knew how to do. Brandon looked at his father. Something moved in his face. Small. Controlled. But there. You've never told me that story, he said. The $2,000. No, Thomas said. Why not? Thomas looked at him. Because you grew up after the foundation existed, he said. You've never had to imagine it before it did. The silence that followed was the specific, loaded silence of a room that was busy around them, a conversation that had gone somewhere the people in it hadn't planned to go. Brandon looked at Nadia. She looked back. She saw him see her, not for the first time tonight, for the first time. The difference between the two was the difference between a fact and a person. He'd stated a fact about her 40 minutes ago. He was looking at a person now. She didn't make it easier for him. Not out of cruelty, because making it easier would have been doing the work for him. And the work wasn't hers to do. Earlier, he said. Yes, she said. I didn't, he started. I know, she said. That's the part worth thinking about. He looked at her. She held his gaze, not with anger, with the specific, clear-eyed patience of someone who had been in this room, not this room, rooms like it, every event she'd ever catered where the same invisible architecture existed, and she'd moved through it and done her work and gone home, and had decided, a long time ago, that the moments that cost something were the moments worth staying in long enough to let them cost what they cost. What do you mean? He said. You didn't mean to, she said. I know that. But the not meaning to is the interesting part. Not to me, to you. She paused. How many times tonight have you done something you didn't mean to? He was quiet. Thomas was looking at the city, giving them the room. I don't know, Brandon said. Neither do I, she said. That's what I mean. He looked at her, at the pendant, at the woman who had developed the mushroom crostini in her grandmother's kitchen and had carried a cast iron pan the size of her thumbnail around her neck every day for 2 years because it was the only way she knew to keep May close. The crostini, he said. Earlier, the woman in the green dress was talking to you about them. Yes, she said. Did you make them? He said. Yes, she said. They were the best thing I ate tonight, he said. She looked at him. Not surprised, not softened, just receiving it. The way you received something that was true and late, and both of those things at once. I know, she said. He almost smiled. The beginning of one, the expression of someone being surprised by a response they hadn't expected, and finding that the surprise was not unpleasant. You know, he said. I made them, she said. I know when something is good. Thomas turned from the window. He was smiling. Not almost. She sounds like James Earl, he said. She sounds like May, Nadia said. If you're still here, subscribe if you haven't. We tell stories that make you look twice at the room you're standing in. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Brandon stayed. Not because Thomas asked him to. Thomas had turned back to the window after the exchange. The specific, deliberate withdrawal of a man who understood that some conversations needed a different configuration than 3 people. Brandon stayed because he didn't know how to leave. Not socially, he knew how to leave conversations. He'd been leaving conversations at events like this for 15 years, the smooth, practiced exit of someone who had places to be and people to see, and the specific, managed momentum of a man running a $40 million foundation. He stayed because something had shifted and he didn't know yet what it was, and leaving felt like it would mean the shifting hadn't happened. He looked at Nadia. She was looking at the city. The grant, he said. You mentioned you applied. She looked at him. 4 years ago, she said. Small business initiative, $15. You didn't get it, he said. No, she said. Do you know why? He said. She looked at him. Form letter, she said. No feedback, no explanation. She paused. The specific kind of no that doesn't tell you anything except that you didn't make it past whatever the first filter was. He was quiet. He knew that process. He'd inherited it when he took over the foundation 3 years ago. The application system, the review committee, the scoring rubric that had been built over years to create consistency, and had succeeded at creating consistency in the way that all systems succeeded at what they were built to do and sometimes nothing else. He'd looked at the numbers quarterly, approval rates, geographic distribution, sector focus. He hadn't looked at the form letters. How many did you send? He said. She looked at him. That year? She said. 11. To 11 different foundations and grant programs. She paused. I got two responses that weren't form letters. One was a rejection with specific feedback that I used to revise my business plan. One was a phone call from a program officer who told me the committee had liked the application, but the timing wasn't right, and to reapply next cycle. Did you? He said. Yes, she said. Different foundation. Got it the second time. How much? He said. $1,000, she said. Enough to get the equipment, not enough to get the kitchen. I rented space for 18 months while I built the client base to justify the lease on my own space. He looked at her. At the woman who had applied to 11 foundations, received 9 form letters, used 1 rejection to improve her application, responded to 1 phone call, gotten $8,000 from a different organization, rented kitchen space for 18 months, and built a business good enough to be catering a $1 500 per plate gala without the $15,000, without the Cole Foundation. You didn't need us, he said. No, she said, but someone else did. He looked at her. What do you mean? He said. I had May, she said. I had 61 years of her knowledge in my head and her kitchen to work in, and her belief that I could do this before I believed it myself. She paused. Not everyone applying to your foundation has a May. Some of them have the idea and the skill and nothing else. For those people, $15,000 isn't seed money. It's the difference between the thing existing and not existing. She looked at him directly. The form letter doesn't know that, she said. The scoring rubric doesn't know that. The review committee, looking at an application from someone who doesn't have the vocabulary of grant writing yet, who doesn't know how to package what they have in the language the form is asking for. She stopped. They see a weak application. They don't see what's behind it. Brandon was quiet. He thought about the scoring rubric, about the consistency it created, about what consistency meant when the thing you were being consistent about was a form. How would you fix it? He said. She looked at him, not with the satisfaction of someone who had been waiting to be asked, with the careful attention of someone who had thought about this for a long time and was deciding how much of the thinking to give. Phone calls, she said. Before the decision, not after. One conversation with every applicant who passes the first filter, not to evaluate them, to understand what they're trying to build and why. She paused. You'd hear things in those calls that the form can't hold. And the people who've never written a grant before, who don't know how to make what they have legible on paper, they'd have a chance to make it legible out loud. That's expensive, he said. Time and staff. Yes, she said. So is sending 9 form letters to 9 people who might be building something that matters. He looked at the city, at Chicago doing what it did, at the specific, continuous life of a place full of people building things that didn't have the vocabulary yet. The Southside Culinary Initiative, he said. The program May volunteered at. Yes, she said. We defunded it, he said. 2 years ago. The metrics weren't meeting the foundation's targets for employment placement. She looked at him. What were the metrics? She said. Job placement within 6 months of program completion, he said. We've at 61%. The target was 75%. What happened to the other 39%, she said. He was quiet. I don't know, he said. Did you ask? She said. He looked at no, he said, because the metric said 61% and 61% wasn't 75%, and so the program wasn't working, she said. But the metric didn't ask. What were the women in that program dealing with that made employment within 6 months complicated? It didn't ask. What did they gain that didn't show up in job placement? It didn't ask. What would their lives look like if the program hadn't existed? She paused. May went every Tuesday for 2 years, she said. She never talked about it. She just went. Because she believed the women in that program deserved 60 years of someone's knowledge showing up for them every week. She looked at him. That doesn't show up in job placement metrics. Brandon looked at his hands, at the gala around them, at 300 people in black tie who had paid $500 each to be here, at $450 in a single evening that the foundation would use to fund programs measured by metrics he'd approved. He thought about form letters, about scoring rubrics, about a program that had been 14 percentage points short of a target and had been defunded and had taken May's Tuesdays with it. Brandon, Thomas said. He'd forgotten his father was there. Thomas was still looking at the city. When I gave James Earl the $2,000, Thomas said, I had no metric. I had no rubric. I had no target for return on investment. He paused. I had a man showing me something he'd made and a feeling to my chest that what he was doing mattered. He turned. I built the foundation to scale that feeling. Somewhere along the way, the scaling replaced the feeling. Brandon looked at his father. At the man who had given away everything, above $340, because he believed in something and had built a $40 million foundation from that belief. At the foundation that Brandon had inherited and run efficiently and well by every measurable standard. At the gap between those two things. How do I find it again? Brandon said. Thomas looked at Nadia. Ask her, he said. She's been telling you for the last 20 minutes. She told him about the phone calls first. Not the concept, the specific memory of the one phone call she'd received from a program officer 4 years ago. The woman's name had been Patricia. She'd called on a Wednesday afternoon in March when Nadia had been at May's kitchen table going through bank statements and trying to make the numbers work in a configuration that would let her keep going. Patricia had said, I've read your application 3 times. The committee passed on it, but I wanted to call because I think there's something here that the form isn't capturing. Can you tell me about the food? Not about the business plan, not about the 5-year projection. About the food. Nadia had talked for 40 minutes. About May's kitchen. About what it meant to cook for people versus cook at them. About the difference between food that fed someone and food that told someone they mattered. That the person who made it had thought about them specifically, had considered what they needed today, had paid attention. Patricia had listened. At the end, she'd said, I can't change our committee's decision. But I want you to know that what you just described is exactly what we're trying to fund. The form didn't show me that. The conversation did. She hadn't funded Nadia. But she'd called. And the call had done something the grant wouldn't have done. It had told Nadia that what she was building was real. That someone outside of May's kitchen could hear it and recognize it and call it what it was. That call, Nadia said, was worth more than $15,000. Brandon looked at her. Because it told you the thing was real, he said. Because it told me someone saw it, she said. He was quiet. She looked at the ballroom. At 300 people in black tie. At the servers moving through them with the practiced invisibility she'd spent her career perfecting. How many applications does the foundation receive annually? She said. About 400, he said. Small business and social enterprise combined. How many get funded? She said. 60 to 70, he said, depending on the year. So 330 people get form letters, she said. Yes, he said. And the foundation moves on to the next cycle, she said. Yes, he said. And the 330, she said. Move on too, he said. Or don't. She looked at him. What do you think happens to the ones who don't? She said. He was quiet. Not because he didn't have an answer. Because the answer required him to sit with something he'd been not sitting with. They stop, he said. Some of them, she said. Yes. And you think a phone call would change that, he said. I think a phone call would tell you which ones have something real that the form can't hold, she said. And it would tell them, the ones who do, that what they have is real. Even if you can't fund it this cycle. She paused. Patricia couldn't fund me, but she called, and I kept going. She looked at him. How many people stopped because nobody called? He looked at the city, at the specific, impossible arithmetic of that question. 330 form letters. Every year. For 12 years since Brandon had taken over. Nearly 4,000 people. I don't know, he said. Neither do I, she said. That's what I mean about what the metric doesn't measure. Thomas had moved away from the window. He was standing near the edge of the room now, talking to someone, the Milwaukee donor, Brandon noticed, the conversation he'd been trying to have for 40 minutes, apparently happening on its own without his management. He watched his father for a moment. Thomas was listening. Not the managed listening of a foundation founder at a gala, the real kind, leaning slightly forward. eyes on the person. The specific, unhurried attention of someone who had decided that what the other person was saying was the most important thing in the room. Brandon had watched his father do this his whole life. He'd always thought of it as a social skill. He understood now it wasn't a skill, it was a practice. The same practice Thomas had been doing at 22 in a workshop in Yazoo County when he'd looked at a small silver cast iron pan and understood that what James Earl Cooper was doing mattered. The practice of stopping long enough to actually see. Can I ask you something? Brandon said. Yes, Nadia said. The crostini, he said. The mushroom ones. You said you developed them in your grandmother's kitchen. Yes, she said. Why mushrooms? He said. She looked at him. At the question, at the fact that he'd asked it. May said mushrooms were just meat for people who hadn't learned to pay attention yet, she said. She meant, if you cooked them right, if you gave them the heat and the time and the fat they needed, they became something completely different from what they started as. Concentrated, deeper, more themselves. She paused. I've been thinking about that for years, she said. About what it means to give something the right conditions to become more itself. Brandon looked at her. You're not just talking about mushrooms, he said. I'm never just talking about mushrooms, she said. He was quiet. He thought about the scoring rubric, about the first filter, about 330 form letters going out every year to people who might be mushrooms, who had something real that needed the right conditions to become what it was capable of being, and who instead received a document that said no in the specific language of institutional efficiency. He thought about what the right conditions looked like. Not the grant, necessarily, the call. The person on the other end of the call who said, I've read your application 3 times. Tell me about the food. The program officer, he said. Patricia, do you know where she is now? Nadia looked at him. She started her own foundation, she said. Smaller, focused on women in food. She calls every applicant. All of them? He said. All of them, she said. She told me once that she'd rather fund 20 people she'd actually talked to than 60 people she'd only read about. He looked at the city, at the foundation his father had built, at the system he'd inherited and optimized and made efficient, at the gap between efficient and right. We have 400 applications, he said. We can't call all of them. No, she said. You can't. So where do you start, he said. She looked at him. With the ones who almost made it, she said. The ones who passed the first filter but didn't get funded. The ones the committee looked at and said, there's something here but not enough. Those are the mushrooms. Those are the ones who need someone to say, I see what you have. Tell me more. He was quiet. She looked at the pendant, at James Earl Cooper's work against her skin, at the thing Thomas had funded with $2,000 and no rubric and a feeling in his chest. Your father didn't have a first filter, she said. He walked into a workshop and looked at what a man had made and believed in it. She paused. You can't run a foundation on feeling alone. I understand that. You need the system. She looked at him. But the system needs something the feeling had. Something that remembers there's a person behind every application. He looked at the floor, at the specific expensive carpet of a venue that cost more per evening than the Southside Culinary Initiative had cost per year. He looked up. The program, he said, May's Tuesdays. If I brought it back, what would it need to actually work? She looked at him. Not with surprise, with the careful attention of someone deciding whether the question was real. She decided it was. Stability, she said. A 3-year commitment minimum, not 1 year renewable. 3 years guaranteed. So the women in the program know it's going to be there when they need it. She paused. And May's, he said. Someone like May, she said. Not a curriculum, a presence. Someone who shows up every Tuesday with 60 years of knowledge and nowhere else to be. Someone who understands that what those women need isn't just training. It's someone who believes what they're doing is worth 60 years of showing up for. He was quiet. Where do you find someone like that? He said. She looked at him. You ask, she said. And then you actually listen to who shows up. The gala ended at 11. Not officially. Officially it ran until midnight. The band still playing, the bar still open, the specific late evening energy of an event that had peaked and was now in its long, graceful decline toward conclusion. But at 11, Thomas Cole found Nadia at the service station. She was breaking down the appetizer setup, her team moving around her with the efficient end-of-event choreography of people who had done this enough times to have a system and were executing it. Thomas watched her work for a moment before she saw him. She was the kind of person who worked the way she talked, with the specific, complete attention of someone who believed that whatever was in front of you deserved all of what you had. She looked up. "Mr. Cole," she said. "Thomas," he said. She almost smiled. He looked at what she was doing, at the specific, careful breakdown of a setup that had fed 300 people and was now being returned to its component parts. "Can I help?" he said. She looked at him, at the founder of the Cole Foundation in his black suit, offering to help break down a catering setup at 11 o'clock at a gala he'd built. "You can hold this," she said. She handed him a tray. He held it. They worked in a comfortable silence for a few minutes. The specific, occupied silence of two people doing something with their hands that didn't require conversation. Thomas held trays. He passed things when she needed things passed. He was not good at it. He was present for it. That was enough. "Brandon told me about the grant," Thomas said. "The one you applied for." "Yes," she said. "I'm sorry," he said. She looked at him. "For the form letter?" she said. "For the system that produced it," he said. "I built the foundation. The system came from me, even the parts I didn't design directly." He paused. "When you build something and then step back, you don't stop being responsible for what it does. You just stop seeing it." She looked at him. "That's the part that costs something," she said. "The not seeing." "Yes," he said. "It's also the part that's fixable," she said. He looked at her. "Is it?" he said. "You're here," she said. "You're holding a tray at 11 o'clock. Brandon is somewhere in that room thinking about phone calls and mushroom." She paused. "The not seeing is fixable as long as there are people willing to look again." He held the tray. He thought about James Earl Cooper, about the workshop in Yazoo County, about a man who had believed that ordinary things deserved to be beautiful and had made them beautiful for 35 years and had died in a town so small it didn't have a stoplight, with a body of work that existed only in the hands and necks of the women who had found him. James Earl never knew what his work became, Thomas said. He never knew that a woman named Mae Washington bought a pendant from him in 1989 and wore it for 30 years and gave it to her granddaughter, who became a chef and catered a gala and changed the way the foundation thinks about what it's doing. She stopped. She looked at him. "You think that's what tonight did?" she said. "I think that's what tonight started," he said. She looked at the pendant, at James Earl Cooper's work, at 35 years and a road trip May had never fully explained, and a workshop in a town with no stoplight. "He made it because he believed it mattered," she said. "Not because he knew what would happen to it." "Yes," Thomas said. "That's the only way anything gets made." She was quiet. She thought about Nadia's table, about the years before it existed, the applications, the form letters, the rented kitchen, the months she'd borrowed money from May and hadn't told anyone. She'd built it because she believed it mattered, not because she knew what would happen. "I want to show you something," Thomas said. He put down the tray. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out a photograph. Old, the edges soft, the color slightly faded, the specific quality of something carried for a long time. A man at a workbench. 50s. Strong hands. The specific focused expression of someone in the middle of making something and aware that someone was taking their picture and choosing to keep making the thing anyway. On the workbench in front of him, small silver objects. A thimble, a spoon, a pan no bigger than a thumbnail. She looked at the photograph, at the hands, at the pan. "James Earl," she said. 1979, Thomas said. 5 years after I gave him the money. I went back to see what he'd built. She looked at the photograph, at the hands that had made the things she wore every day, at the man who had believed the ordinary deserved to be beautiful. "Why do you carry this?" she said. Thomas looked at the photograph. "Because I forget things," he said. "Everyone does. You build something, And it gets big, and the getting big is its own kind of pressure, and you start making decisions based on what the big thing needs instead of what it was built for. He paused. This reminds me what it was built for. She looked at him. A feeling in your chest, she said. Yes, he said. That a man in a workshop in Mississippi was doing something that mattered, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the photograph one more time. She handed it back. He put it in his pocket. Thomas, she said. Yes, she said. May had a photograph too, she said. I found it with the photos from the shelter program. Her at the counter with the women. She paused. She's laughing in it. I don't know what was said, but she's laughing the way she laughed when something was exactly right. Thomas looked at her. Where is it? He said. On my refrigerator, she said. At home. He was quiet. He said, that's where it belongs. She picked up the tray he'd set down. She kept working. He picked up another one. He kept helping. Thomas, she said. Yes, she said. The Southside Culinary Initiative, she said. If Brandon brings it back, the Tuesday presents, the someone like May. Yes, he said. She looked at him. I'll do it, she said. He looked at her. You have a business to run, he said. May had a business to run, she said. She found the Tuesdays. He was quiet, the specific, full quiet of someone receiving something they hadn't asked for and understanding exactly what it meant. You'd come every Tuesday, he said. I'd come every Tuesday, she said. Not to teach, to cook with them, to show up. She paused, the way May did. Thomas looked at the pendant, at the pan, at the ordinary thing made beautiful. He thought about James Earl, about $2,000 and no rubric and a feeling in his chest, about what it meant to believe in something before you knew what it would become. She would have done this, he said. May. Yes, Nadia said. That's why I'm doing it. If you're still here, this is the kind of story that stays with you because it's not really about a gala. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone who needs to remember why they started, and I'll see you on the other side of this. He found them at 11:15. Not looking for his father this time, looking for her. He'd spent 40 minutes after their conversation, doing what he always did at events like this, moving through the room, the smooth, practiced momentum of a man who had places to be and people to manage and a foundation to represent. Except he hadn't been present for any of it. He'd been in the conversation, still in it. The way you stayed in something after it ended because what it had opened hadn't closed yet. He'd shaken hands and said the right things and smiled at the right moments, and the whole time he'd been thinking about mushrooms, about heat and time and the right conditions, about what the foundation had been doing to the applications that needed the right conditions and didn't have the vocabulary yet to ask for them, about 4,000 form letters over 12 years, about the ones who had stopped. He found them at the service station, his father holding a tray, Nadia working around him with the efficient, complete attention of someone finishing what they'd started. He stopped. He looked at his father, at the founder of the Cole Foundation, holding a catering tray at 11:15 at a black tie gala, because the woman beside him had handed it to him and he'd taken it. He thought about 22 years old and $340 and a workshop in Mississippi. He thought about the man his father had been before the foundation was the foundation, before the building became bigger than the reason for building. He walked over. Can I help? He said. Nadia looked at him. The specific, assessing look, fast, accurate, reading for the gap between what was said and what was meant. She handed him a tray. He took it. They worked for a few minutes without speaking. The three of them. Brandon had never broken down a catering setup before. He was not good at it. He kept getting in the way. Nadia moved around him without comment, adjusting, accommodating, the practiced patience of someone who was used to working in spaces that weren't designed for what she was doing. You're standing in the wrong place. She's sorry, he said. Move left, she said. He moved left. Better, she said. He held the tray. He thought about standing in the wrong place, about how long he'd been doing it without knowing. The grant process, he said. I've been thinking about what you said. I know, she said. I can see you thinking. He looked at her. Is it that obvious? He said. You have a specific face for it, she said. Like you're doing math on something that doesn't have numbers yet. Thomas made a sound. Almost a laugh. Brandon looked at his father. Thomas was looking at the tray he was holding, with the specific private expression of someone enjoying something he wasn't going to explain. The phone calls, Brandon said. I want to implement them. Not for all 400, for the ones who pass the first filter and don't get funded. The borderline applications. How many is that? Nadia said. Roughly 120 a year, he said. The ones the committee looks at and says, there's something here, but we can't get there this cycle. 120 calls, she said. Over 3 months, he said. 10 to 15 minutes each. One conversation. Not to reevaluate the application, to tell the person what the committee saw and ask them to tell us what the form didn't capture. She was quiet. Working. He watched her hands, the specific, efficient motion of someone who had done this enough times that the work was automatic and the thinking could happen somewhere else. That's not what I said, she said. He looked at her. You said phone calls before the decision, she said. Not after. I know, he said, but before is harder. Before changes the process. It adds time and staff and it slows the cycle. He paused. After is what I can do now. Before is what I'm working toward. She looked at him. Reading again. Okay, she said. After is a start. It's not enough, he said. No, she said. But it's honest. And honest is better than promising what you can't deliver yet. He looked at the tray in his hands. At the specific, ordinary work of clearing up after an evening that had cost $1,500 per person to attend. The Southside Culinary Initiative, he said. If I bring it back, when? Thomas said. Brandon looked at his father. Thomas was looking at the tray he was holding. When, Brandon said. 3-year commitment. Guaranteed funding. Not performance linked to a placement metric. What metric then? Nadia said. I don't know yet, he said. That's what I want to figure out. He paused. Something that measures what actually changes. Not just where someone ends up 6 months after, but what they have that they didn't have before. That's harder to measure, she said. Yes, he said. It's also what matters. Yes, he said. She was quiet for a moment, working. Brandon, she said. Yes, she said. Why did you come back over here? She said. You had a room full of donors and board members and people who needed things from you. You could have left this. She gestured at the service station, the breaking down, the trays, any mapper alone, and nobody would have noticed. He looked at her. At the honest question. At the fact that she'd asked it directly rather than letting him arrive at the answer himself. Because I've been noticing the wrong things, he said, for a long time. I've been in that room noticing what the foundation needs from the people in it. I haven't been noticing what the people outside it need from the foundation. He paused. I came back because you're outside it, and I wanted to keep listening. She looked at him. The assessment. Then something shifted, not warmth exactly, something more useful than warmth. The specific expression of someone revising an understanding they'd formed earlier in the evening. Not absolution. Revision. The woman in the green dress, he said. Yes, she said. She asked me later what the crostini were made with, he said. I didn't know. I told her to ask the catering staff. And? She said she already had, he said. She said the chef told her it was a family recipe. She seemed. He paused. She seemed like she understood something I didn't. She'd talked to the person who made it, Nadia said. That changes how you taste it. He looked at her. Yes, he said. I'm starting to understand that. Thomas put down his tray. He looked at his son. At the man who had grown up in the foundation's success and was standing in a service station at 11:30, holding a catering tray and learning something he should have learned earlier and was learning now. Brandon, Thomas said. Yes, your grandfather, Thomas said. Do you know what he did for work? Brandon looked at him. He was a mechanic, Brandon said. He was the best mechanic in Evanston for 30 years, Thomas said. He fixed things that other people said couldn't be fixed. Not because he was smarter, because he looked at the thing that was broken and he saw the whole thing. Not just where it was broken, what it was trying to do. He paused. He told me once, You can't fix something you haven't understood, and you can't understand something you haven't looked at. Brandon looked at his father. You've never told me that either, he said. No, Thomas said. Why are you telling me now? Brandon said. Thomas looked at Nadia. Because she asked the right questions, he said. And you finally listened. Brandon looked at Nadia. She was folding the last tablecloth with the specific practiced efficiency of someone finishing what they'd started. Not waiting for him to respond, not performing patience, just finishing. He thought about the mushroom crostini, about heat and time and the right conditions, about what became possible when you gave something what it needed instead of what was convenient. He put down his tray. Nadia, he said. She looked up. The application you submitted 4 years ago, he said. I want to read it. She looked at him. Why? She said. Because I want to know what we missed, he said. Not to change it. To understand what the first filter didn't catch. He paused. If I'm going to change the process, I need to understand exactly what the process lost. She looked at him for a long moment. I'll send it, she said. Thank you, he said. Brandon, she said. Yes, she said. Read it like you're listening, she said. Not like you're evaluating. He looked at her. What's the difference? He said. Evaluating, she said. You're looking for what it has. Listening, you're trying to understand what it's trying to say. He was quiet. He thought about Patricia. About tell me about the food. About 40 minutes of Nadia talking about May's kitchen and what it meant to cook for people versus cook at them. About all the applications the foundation had evaluated that nobody had listened to. I'll read it like I'm listening, he said. She nodded. She picked up the last of the trays. She handed one to Thomas. She handed one to Brandon. She picked up the third. They walked toward the kitchen together. 3 people carrying trays at 11:30. The band still playing somewhere in the room behind them. The Gala still running. She left the building at 12:40. Her team had gone ahead. She'd told them to take the van. She'd get a ride share. The specific end-of-event delegation of someone whose team had done good work and deserved to be done before the person running it. She stood outside on the sidewalk. Chicago in November at 12:40 in the morning. The specific cold clarity of a city that didn't soften itself for the hour or the temperature. The wind off the lake doing what it always did. The street still active in the way Chicago streets were still active at this hour. Not quiet, just different. She put her coat on. She reached up and touched the pendant, the cast iron pan the size of her thumbnail, cold now from the night air. She held it for a moment. She thought about James Earl Cooper in a workshop in Yazoo County, believing the ordinary deserved to be beautiful. She thought about May on a road trip in 1989 that she'd never fully explained. She thought about the specific invisible thread connecting a workshop in Mississippi to a gala on the 43rd floor of a building in Chicago, to a pendant that had been worn every day for 35 years by 2 women who had never known the man who made it. She thought about what Thomas had said. He never knew what his work became. She thought about that, about all the things you made without knowing what they would become. The mushroom crostini developed at 2 in the morning in May's kitchen. The recipe in her head that had come from 61 years of someone paying attention. The Tuesdays she'd just committed to. She didn't know what those Tuesdays would become. May hadn't known either. That was the only way anything got made. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. This is Brandon Cole. I got your number from the foundation's contract. I hope that's okay. I read the application tonight, the one from 4 years ago. I want to talk about it when you have time. Not to apologize. She read it twice. She looked at the pendant. She typed back, Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. I'll send you an address. She put her phone away. She looked at the city, at Chicago doing what it did regardless of what happened on the 43rd floor above it. She thought about May, about the folder of photos on the refrigerator, about the woman laughing at a stainless steel counter at something someone had said. I don't know what was said, but she's laughing the way. She laughed when something was exactly right. She thought about tonight, about what had been exactly right about it. Not the gala, not the pendant being recognized, Not Brandon's pivot or Thomas's photograph or the conversation about metrics and mushrooms and what the foundation had been built on. The moment Thomas had taken the tray, that was it. That was the thing. Not a speech, not a decision, not a commitment to a 3-year program or a new grant process or 120 phone calls. A man in a black suit taking a tray because someone handed it to him and it needed to be carried. That was what it looked like when something shifted. Not large, not announced. Just the ordinary thing done. She went home. She stood in her kitchen at 1:15, the pendant still around her neck. She took out the recipe book. May's recipe book, the one she'd had since she was 4 years old, the specific, worn softness of a book that had been handled every day for 60 years. She opened it to a page she hadn't opened in a while. May's handwriting, not a recipe. A note May had written to herself at some point. Nadia didn't know when, hadn't been there, had just found it one day and left it where she found it because some things belonged where they were. The food is never just the food. It is the attention you paid while making it, the person you were thinking of, the belief that what they eat tonight matters because they matter. Cook like that, always, even when nobody sees you doing it, especially then. She read it twice. She put the book back. She looked at the pendant, at the ordinary thing made beautiful. She thought about Tuesday, about the women who would be in that kitchen, about what she had to give them. Not technique, not curriculum. 60 years of someone paying attention, passed down and down and down until it reached her hands and would reach theirs. That was the gift. That was what May had given her. That was what she was going to give. 3 weeks later, Brandon Cole sat in Nadia's table's kitchen, not for an event, for the conversation she'd told him to have. He'd brought the application. She'd made coffee. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, and she looked at him and said, "Read me the first paragraph," out loud. He looked at her. He looked at the application he read. She listened. When he finished the first paragraph, she said, "What did you hear?" He thought about it. "Someone who knows how to cook," he said, and is trying to explain why that matters. "What did the committee hear?" She said. He read the committee notes. "Insufficient revenue projections," he said. "Limited market analysis. No evidence of prior business management experience." He put the notes down. He looked at her. "They were evaluating," he said. "Yes," she said. "You were trying to say something," he said. "Yes," she said. "They were listening for something else," he said. "Yes," she said. He was quiet. He looked at the application, at 4 years ago, at the woman across from him who had built Nadia's table, without the $15,000, and without the phone call, and without anyone from the foundation ever knowing what she was doing. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Ask," she said. "If we'd funded you," he said, 4 years ago, what would be different?" She thought about it, honestly. Not the easy answer. 2 years, she said. "I would have gotten here 2 years earlier. The rented kitchen, the client building, the lease, I could have skipped most of that." She paused. 2 years is a long time when you're trying to build something and you're doing it alone. He looked at the application. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," she said. "I mean it," he said. "Not as the foundation, as the person who ran the process that sent you a form letter." She looked at him, at the distinction, at the fact that he'd made it. "I know," she said again. "That's why I'm sitting here." He looked at the kitchen, at the specific, professional warmth of a space that had been built by someone who understood that the place you cooked and shaped what you cooked. "The Tuesdays," he said. "You said you'd start in January." "Yes," she said. 10 women in the first cohort," he said. "We've already had 43 applications." She looked at him. 43, she said. "In 3 weeks," he said, "since we announced." She looked at the recipe book on the counter, at May's handwriting inside it, at 61 years of paying attention waiting to be given. "We're going to need more Tuesdays," she said. He almost smiled. "Yes," he said, "I think we are." She picked up the coffee. She poured him a cup. She poured herself one. They sat at the kitchen table. Two people who had started the evening on opposite sides of something and had ended up at the same table. Not because the distance had disappeared, because they'd both been willing to cross it. "Brandon," she said. "Yes." she said. The application, she said. Keep it. Why? He said. For the same reason your father keeps the photograph, she said. So you remember what you're looking for. Before it learned the language to tell you. He looked at the application, at 4 years ago, at everything it had been trying to say. He folded it carefully. He put it in his jacket pocket, against his chest. The same place Thomas kept the photograph. The first Tuesday was in January. 8 women. A commercial kitchen on the south side. 9 o'clock in the morning. Nadia arrived early. She set up the way May had always set up, everything in its place before anyone arrived, the specific, quiet preparation of someone who understood that the space communicated something before the work began. She put May's recipe book on the counter, not to use, to have there. The women came in one by one, different ages, different backgrounds, the specific, careful energy of people who had signed up for something and weren't sure yet what it was going to ask of them. Nadia looked at them. She thought about May at a counter like this one, about what May had known that she was still learning. We're not going to start with technique, she said. We're going to start with who you're cooking for. Tell me one person, someone specific, someone you want to feed. The room was quiet. Then one woman spoke, then another, then all of them. Nadia touched the pendant on the drive home, the cast iron pan. Cold from the winter air, she held it for a moment. She thought about James Earl Cooper, making it in a workshop in Mississippi, not knowing it would end up here. She thought about May wearing it for 30 years, not knowing her granddaughter would wear it into a room that would change because of it. She thought about what Thomas had said. He never knew what his work became. She looked at her hands on the steering wheel, the same hands that had learned from May's hands. She thought about 8 women in a kitchen, about what their hands would learn, about what those hands would make, about who would be fed. She didn't know what it would become. That was the only way to begin. Subscribe if you're new. Share this with someone who needs to remember why they started. And tell me in the comments, what are you making right now that you don't yet know what it will become? I read everyone. See you in the next story.